All right, let's get stuck into all of this with Chris's heavy-hitting political panel. We've got Liberal Senator Hollie Hughes and former Labor power broker Graham Richardson. Hollie, Richo, thank you for joining me tonight.
Good evening, Caleb. Nice to see you back up, Richo.
Always good to see you, Hollie.
All right, good to have you both. Now, Richo, I have to go to you here first. You know, you've obviously heard what I've just said, and no doubt Anthony Albanese will be hoping to hit the reset button on the campaign trail this week after, what was a pretty rocky start. Already today, he's had to clarify his position on border policy. That's for the second time. I mean, Richo, what is going on with Albo here? Is he seriously going to make it 5 weeks?
I think he'll make it 5 weeks easily. I mean, it's a rocky start. I'm not going to deny that. I think he's had better weeks. But if you're going to have a bad week in a campaign, best to be the first, not the last. So I think we're just watching from now on. But I won't get worried unless I see him make another mistake, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be very careful not to do so.
Well, you'd hope so, but I mean, what about these allegations that he's infamous for not reading his policy briefings and the like? I mean, is this the Albanese you know, Richo?
No, actually, I've watched that with quite a bit of surprise, because I've known him a long time, and as far as I've been concerned, he's always been across his briefs. If anything, it's overdone. So the idea that he's in some way not reading them is completely foreign to me. It bears no relation to what I've witnessed over the last few decades.
Well, Hollie, if Richo is right, and usually his attention to detail, Albo's attention to detail is overdone, we didn't see any of that this week. I mean, the Liberal Party, the coalition, you mob must be jumping up and down with joy at what you saw this week.
Look, we know elections have a long way to run. There's still 5 weeks to go in this election. I think a rocky start is perhaps the most diplomatic way I've heard Albo's start described, Richo. But talking about being over your brief, and I think it's become evident, Albanese's never had a financial portfolio, a treasury portfolio, national security portfolio, and today is an absolute shocker. We know Operation Sovereign Borders had 3 tenets. You had turning the boats back when safe, offshore processing, as well as temporary protection visas. And those 3 tenets ensured that Operation Sovereign Borders was sorry, I can't even get the word out. But, you know, it was that success that has seen the boats stop. The only person who I think knows who Albanese is in Australia at the moment in a positive light is perhaps the people smugglers that as they're starting to line the boats up again. I mean, this is just extraordinary.
Well, I mean, as we said before, some of the missteps he's made this week have been pretty bad, and they continue to happen. Now, look, as I said earlier, you know, the coalition, you're in government, you can't get too cocky at this stage, but if you were rating your chances of winning the election after what you've seen this week, how would you be feeling?
Well, I think Australians are very cognizant to the fact that it is about cost of living pressures for them at the moment, as well as it is keeping our borders and our nation secure. And both of those issues are now at the forefront. And as you rightly pointed out in your introduction, every single Australian would know what the cash rate is, apart from the fact it's been the same for 2 years. But also, Josh mentioned the unemployment rate quite a number of times during the budget just a few weeks ago. It makes a significant difference to Australians' lives. And that cost of living pressure, if you do see a rate increase, whether it is on mortgages or whether it's then passed on through small and medium-sized businesses as they face greater pressure through their own business loans, of course it's going to have a significant impact. And I think Albanese has shown he is just not up to the job. But where is the rest of his team? I mean, they're almost all in hibernation or isolation. It's just extraordinary. I mean, maybe they're embarrassed to be seen with him. I don't know.
Well, it would seem Kevin Rudd might be, but look, we put the torch on the Labor Party. Let's put the torch on the Libs now. It's been going on for a little while. Liberal candidate for Warringah, Catherine Devos, continues to cause headaches and fractures within the party. PM Scott Morrison continues to back her, despite calls from some within the party and plenty outside to disendorse her over her views on transgender people. Hollie, do you think Catherine Devos needs to go, or does she deserve the support of the Prime Minister?
Well, I think it's interesting that we see today Richard Marles out there calling for action around Catherine Devos. Now, this is Richard Marles, who was completely silent when the Labor candidate for Hunter was exposed for having some rather unsavoury previous social media posts on his own profile. And of course, he came out, removed them and apologised in the same way that Ms Devos has done. And that's actually, you know, what's happened here. If it's good for one, it's good for the other. But the fact that it is Richard Marles who's dared to put his head up on this issue, I find absolutely distasteful and disgusting. This is the man who Kimberley Kitching confided in, yet he now is some moral crusader. I do not think so. So, Ms Devos has apologised for what she said. I think there's been broad agreement what she said at the time was inappropriate. The candidate for Hunter from the Labor Party had a very similar situation. Labor Party did not demand the disendorsement there. And quite frankly, Richard Marles, I don't think should at any time in the future put his head up as some sort of moral crusader.
Well, it's interesting. Maurice Payne danced around this a bit more than you did just then this morning, Hollie. But Richo, is this a distraction the Prime Minister doesn't need?
Well, I think that anything like that, when you're getting onto subjects like transgenders, it's really going to always end in tears. You can't win if you are looking favourably in their direction. Then you've got the Christians who are looking unfavourably at you, and so it's really hard to get your foot in front. And so I think what Scott Morrison will want to be doing is jumping into the trench and lying as flat on his back in there as he can, let this commotion pass over him, let this chalice pass over him, he might say, and then resume normal business.
The dog barks and the caravan rolls on. We'll stick with you, Richo. An issue that looks like it'll dominate the campaign this week, and the Nine papers have been pushing it fairly hard, is that of a federal ICAC, with criticism that the coalition broke its promise on the issue. But there have been a number of Liberal MPs who have come out insisting the issue isn't a major concern for voters. Richo, do you think anyone's rolling up to the ballot box going, "Where's the federal ICAC"?
No, I don't. I don't think anyone's going to do that. I think a federal ICAC's just unnecessary anyway, and so I'd be surprised if Scott Morrison did it. But Labor seems to be now wedded to the idea. It will finish up being a huge pain in the bum for them. That I can bet you. All ICACs do is examine the people who put them in place. And try and put them out of place. So it doesn't strike me as very sensible.
Well, it's claimed a few Labor people in New SouthAles, that's for sure. But I mean, Hollie, you know, Labor's said that they'll get this thing going almost immediately if they win government. A, is it workable? But B, if that's what they want to do.
Absolutely, it's not. You know, how wedded to it are they, Richo? How wedded are they when they've got a 2-page document outlining what they think this Federal Integrity Commission should look like? It's nothing but drivel that they've managed to put out. The coalition did put together a plan for a Federal Integrity Commission.
You don't need a 500-page tome to say what something will look like, especially something that's in all the states, it's everywhere.
Richo, you and I are on a unity ticket here that I don't think this is the biggest issue facing voters at all. But how can you declare you'll be ready to implement one when you've got a 2-page flyer with the entire content? I mean, it's just a joke. The Labor Party are taking the Australian voters for mugs if they think that that's going to carry weight.
You don't need some massive document to put in place an ICAC. The examples of it are all over Australia. I think we can agree you need more than 2 pages of detail.
It is
just not that hard to do. And we've got experience. We've got tons of experience.
Well, they can do it. They can do it overnight. It sounds like they can do it overnight.
Well, at least Albo might be able to remember
It'd be a pretty good
some of
effort.
Mate, you might be able to remember it if it's only 2 pages.
It'd be a pretty good effort.